Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for not being Jock. However, I think we should start off with a huge round of applause for an absolute Glaswegian legend, Mr. Frank Quiley.
Thank you very much. So, we're just going to start having a wee chat while we're waiting for Jock. Apparently, he was over at his booth very recently, and apparently he's going looking for a beer. We're presuming that he's going to get a beer and bring it back, not he's just going for a beer. So Gareth and I will just have a wee chat for a bit, and actually we could talk about Jock, couldn't we?
Well, I was going to talk about you first of
All
all.
right.
I think first of all I should congratulate this audience. This is absolutely the coolest people at Comic Con. They know where the true artist is, they know what they're watching, they know what they're talking about.
They're just people that are tired, they want to rest. I've done this at cons many times. Just go somewhere where there's a seat and listen to somebody that you don't know.
Now, I thought they were turning up half an hour to make sure they got a good seat to see you.
Oh, that's what it will be, of course.
So, I suppose an interesting thing to ask you is, you obviously made some of the greatest comic books ever. What are you up to at the moment? What are you doing?
There's Jock there.
It's too late, I stole your job, I'm sorry. Okay, but you still have to answer that question.
Right, okay. Oh, I heard you were getting a beer. Okay, thanks very much, Gareth.
Finish that question.
Oh yeah, so what I'm doing just now, actually, unless you want to stay up here, so what I'm doing just now is, this morning, this is the reason I'm actually sweating. Sha asked me to get here between 1 and 1:30, and I was practically running down that covered walkway from the train station at 5:02, and I get sent right to the other end. They sent me to a different stage, like a kind of like wrestling stage. So obviously my physique, they thought that guy's a wrestler. So what I was doing this morning that I left so late is I'm doing a poster for Angoulême, the French comic festival. So it's because it's this isn't the year of Superman, next year's the year of Superman, and every year in Angoulême they have three main kind of areas. They've got manga, they've got bande dessinée, they're French-Belgian comics, and then they've got American comics. So they asked me to do a Superman poster. So they get 3 posters every Angoulême, and they saw when I had an exhibition in Kelvin Grove. What they wanted Superman flying over the Kelvin Grove Art Gallery. So the Angoulême people fancied that, so I had to do Superman flying over the rooftops of Angoulême. And then they said, could you shoehorn a manga character and a bande dessinée character into the clouds in the sky?
And you said no.
I said I will if I've got time, and I planned not to have time. But do you know what? I've actually done a cloud that's shaped like Asterix, and another cloud that's shaped like somebody from Dragon Ball Z who's got a very distinctive hairstyle, and there's subtly in the background, but it's actually not subtle at all. It looks ridiculous, but anyway, enough about me.
Yeah, sorry to keep you waiting. I was trying to A, look for a bit, not realising that he was actually here, and B, find some beer. And this gentleman helped us. I say helped, I still don't have any beer, so... But yeah, thanks for coming along. Can I just say as well, I was born here. I know I don't sound like I was, so it's very nice.
East Kilbride.
East Kilbride. So it feels quite special for me to be back here, so thanks everyone for coming along. And,
do you know, Grant Morrison and I did a signing in Forbidden Planet in Sucky Hall Street yesterday.
168 Sucky Hall Street? No, it's Buchanan Street, I thought. Wasn't that? I used to go there. I used to visit my nana in Blantyre, and I used to come into Glasgow to go to AKA Books and Comics, and FP, which was in Buchanan Street. Is it not still there?
It was in Buchanan Street forever, and then I should know this. 2020 or something like that,
okay.
around about. I think it was maybe the first lockdown year. They moved.
Wizard email,
What?
please read their lost pen. That's Wizard email, please read your lost pen.
I can't hear you, sorry. 2019. Thank you. So 2019, the wee FP on Buchanan Street moved to a really big premises on Turkey Hill Street. And no, but the reason I mentioned that Grant and I did the signing, Grant never does signings anymore. So it was considerably more popular than the last signing I did in there when I was on my own.
No, you're the real draw, Vin. Come on.
But the thing is, Grant's from East Kilbride.
Is he?
Yeah. And
I didn't know that. Yeah.
And just in talking to people as we were signing the stuff, about a quarter of the people that came to the signing were all claimed that they were from East Kilbride. So it's,
Okay, so this is where I reveal I'm not really from East Kilbride either. No, I am.
I went to school in East Kilbride.
Did you?
Yes.
I was. My mum worked at Hermias Hospital. She was a nurse, and so I was only born there. I didn't live there.
So how did you get into comics?
Like I guess a lot of us from our generation, I love drawing anyway, and I discovered 2000 AD. I came to it kind of late. I was maybe 13, 14, and as soon you guys know 2000 AD, I'm assuming. Hands up, who knows? Yeah, I don't know. I'm speaking to the converted, but sometimes you got to check because I'm getting old now. I never know. Yeah, as soon as I saw that, like I didn't really know what it was, but I was like, I want to do that. It was like I realised now that the time that I discovered it, it was almost like finding like an amazing little record label that has a roster of really cool bands. You know, all the writers and artists that were in 2000 AD in the 80s, and this was maybe late 80s. I was a little bit after it, but I immediately like devoured as much 2000 AD as I could get. And you know, in one issue, you have like Alan Moore, Brian Bolland, Kevin O'Neill, Mick McMahon. I mean, it was just insane. And of course, as a kid, as a young teenager, I was just, when something really affects you and you don't even really know why it's affecting you, it's just getting you. Like a good band, you know what I mean? It just totally hits you. And that's what made me want to get into comics. And
were you not reading any comics before you discovered?
No, I had like a Superman annual from 1979 maybe.
Uh-huh.
And, I used to read the Bruins when I came up here as well, of course. But no, not really. It was absolutely 2000 AD that did it. Yeah.
I'm quite unusual in like British comic artists in that I didn't really know anything about 2000 AD until I was getting into like self-published comics when I was like 20, 21, and it was one of the other guys that was working for that comic, Electric Soup it was called.
Yeah.
He started showing me like all the writers and artists that he was into. So like in a kind of couple of months, I get Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow and Watchmen and just everything like Akira, and that's when I discovered like 2000 AD.
Do you think that's why? Because I remember you starting in 2000 AD. In fact, when we met originally, I hitchhiked from Devon, where I now live, up to a Glasgow con in '95, I think it was, and I happened to meet Steve McManus, who was an ex-editor of 2000 AD, and that's a whole other story, but I did meet you then, and I remember you had maybe just started 95, did you start in like 93, 94, did you
yeah,
something like that?
Yeah.
But I was going to say, do you think that's why, because, you like all great comics, you have a very unique style, and I wonder whether like you felt like you brought something completely different to 2000 AD and to Dread, into, what was the Shimura.
Yeah.
The pages were just like amazing, but they were different. You know, they weren't. You know, you see the guys that, particularly at the time, you saw a lot of guys that looked like Bisley.
Yeah.
You know, you had a lot of painters that frankly couldn't paint very well. But and I feel sorry for them. They were told to do that. I've spoken to them since.
Yeah, that was actually David Bishop, who was the editor at the time. And as you say, like, most people were doing what was called fully painted artwork, and most of them were trying their best to be something like Simon Bisley and Glenn Fabry.
Yeah.
And
then I remember seeing yours, and it was just so unique. But interestingly enough, that fits perfectly actually into the 2000 AD ethos to me. It's like you shouldn't look like anyone else in 2000 AD. You know, and I do wonder whether that was a really good training ground, because I didn't really set out to have my own style, but you do develop your own style the more work you do, if you're given the freedom to be able to do that. You know, some people aren't, like we say. That's just one of the nice things about comics, right? You know, for me, the people that I love are the people that have their own sort of voice. But I had 7 years of zero work, signing on the dole. We had our little boy. I really should have been more responsible and get a proper job, but I kind of felt in my gut that I could do it, you know? Like he says now, luckily it's all worked out okay, but you know, I didn't know whether I was being naive or just optimistic or whatever, but I just felt like I could do it. So I stuck at it, you know, and it was pretty tough to begin with, but I eventually got like in fact, Stephen Manners gave me a pin-up of Dread from that show, and it was terrible. It was like, you know, I wasn't ready at all. But he was super supportive in the way that Steve is. Like, he'd phone me on a Sunday at home, you know, just to say, how are you doing? Just checking in, you know, seeing what you're up to. And, you know, just like, I realise now that's magic, isn't it? Like, you don't really get that from editors a lot.
And see, once you got your first commission, how steady was work?
So I did that pin-up, and then I did a few like role-playing game stuff, there's some Magic the Gathering cards and Battletech cards, and I was getting to the point, like say our boy was like maybe a year old, and I was getting a bit deflated by it all, and this is a true story. I say that a friend of mine, Dom Reardon, I don't know whether you know Dom, but we came up together, and we used to learn to like draw and paint. I'd go out, stay in his farmhouse, and we'd stay up all night painting, and you know, and I'd now got a family. I still didn't really have work, and I went out to Dom's house again to try and like rekindle a bit of the sort of, you know, the magic, as it were. And I really remember I was trudging home at 6 a.m. The sun was coming out. I've got a little baby at home, and I was thinking, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And that was the first time I really thought, okay, fella, maybe I should be doing something else. I got home, and also I really didn't like what I painted either. That's a little thing. And so I got home. I used to have a little studio, like a partition in the bedroom, and I got up at like midday, like really irresponsible when you're a new dad, you know. And I walked around to my little studio, and the sun was coming in, shining on the painting that I'd done the night before. And I was like, oh, that's not so bad. And then I went downstairs, and there was an answer phone message from Andy Diggle in 2000 AD, and I've never been out of work since.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened. So it's very surreal. Like, I don't really believe in fate and whatever, you know, but it was quite bizarre that it was the first time I thought, cut it out, man, you know. And then here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I had something kind of similar, because after art school I had a good few years where I was just freelancing, and I was doing posters for nightclubs and murals for restaurants and all sorts of things, and caricatures for people's retirements, and and I always either had 2 jobs on at once or nothing, and because I had to make up my own prices, and nobody's ever got a clue how to price their work, you know, I just couldn't make a decent living, and but once I only agreed to do some stuff for nothing for this Electric Soup comic, purely because I had the time and I was signing on and I didn't have enough work, and so I mean it was totally free. But through working on like just making up my own comics, I actually started really thinking, I would like to do this. I'd like to do this all the time, and it was David Bishop that first gave me work, and once I got that first, it was a 7-page Missionary Man story, and he just said, listen, start the pages, send them to me once you're happy with them, and be honest about how long it took you. And
That's really
and
great.
he said, if you want another one, I'll give you another one, and that was it. That was the ball rolling.
Being given freedom to, like, deadlines can be really hard with comics, and being given the freedom to basically indulge yourself at that point. I think when you're starting out, I think that's really important to do that. You have to kind of like just put everything you've got into it, and that does take time, right? You know, you sort of learn to figure out how to manage your time. I remember Stephen Manners again, he used the line like, deadlines are your religion, right? It sounds like a throwaway comment, but have a little think what that really means, because he is not wrong. Like, nearly every day of my life, I'm thinking about what I've either meant to be doing or should be doing, or like hopefully I can do more, you know. And it is like that. It's pretty brutal, you know. Yeah, well, I mean, you know, that speaks volumes to why you're doing the work you're doing now, right? It's David letting you the break.
Yeah, but I mean, I would have liked to have worked in the European market where you got an advance for like signing on to do a book, and you handed it in when you were happy with it, and then you get another one. And also you'd be doing everything. You would be doing the colouring yourself as well as the drawing. And but do you know, it's when I first started working for DC, that was the first time I'd had somebody else colouring my work, and I hated it, and I thought I will never like let somebody ink over my pencils. And when I got offered the authority, because it was a monthly, I thought there's no way I can. I'm not fast enough. I wasn't really fast enough to do a monthly just penciling. I certainly couldn't have inked it. And but it's that way. You make these concessions and you're trying to work faster, and you actually learn a lot just by having different approaches. But so go on to your DC stuff now.
Yeah.
So Losers, would that be the first thing?
Yeah, I did an issue of Hellblazer first. That was edited by the same guy, Will Dennis, who's still my editor now for all the stuff I'm doing at Distillery. He wrote my artwork. I mean, he's still, you know. Again, comics for me, like I like the way that you can make relationships with people, and they become actually your currency, really, you know. I remember going to like the first US shows, and I'd be with some friends, and they'd be like, "Oh, I want to go to the Marvel party," you know. "Oh, I want to go and do," and I was just hanging out with a few people that I'd met, you know, and like nurturing that, you know, because when you go to a Marvel party, just trust me, you're in a room with like 200 people, just it's a racket, no one cares who anyone, you know, there's nothing to benefit from that, right? And I always took the sort of opinion that you should sort of nurture, what you have, and generally speaking, you know, the strong work can come from that. Anyway, what was the question? Losers. Oh yeah, so Will Dennis was. I met Karen Berger in Bristol. He used to be the boss at Vertigo, and I'd been at 2000 AD for maybe a couple of years. Did some dreads, did a Lenny Zero thing with Andy Diggle, who then went on to write The Losers, and. I went up to meet Karen, and she went, "Oh, you're Jock," and I was like, you know. But it's like I was like, okay, that's a pretty good start. So, you know, and I got an email from Will saying, "Hey man, you don't know me. My name's Will Dennis, and we want you to be the regular artist on The Losers, and we think that's awesome." I mean, that's literally how he wrote the email to someone he'd never met, but no one had told me. You know, no one had told me at all, and I was like, "This sounds amazing, but I don't know about this," you know. But The Losers was with Andy Diggle. It was like an action thing, and I wasn't expecting to. My first book of Vertigo, you know, I thought it would be more fanciful, not like an action book, right? But at the same time, they were doing like 100 bullets, and it started sort of branching out. But at the same time, I thought, okay, if we're doing an action book, I'm going to try and make it the best, you know, action book you can do, you know. So at the time, I sort of played around with kind of wide angles and fisheye lenses, and you know, all that stuff you do when you're young, and you're just kind of like really sort of striving for stuff, you know. But similarly, it was a monthly book. I'd never done one, didn't know whether I could do one, and it was like it's a team book as well. So you're drawing like 5 characters in one panel a lot of the time. And it was like trial by fire, and actually the first issue cover even, I just got on Mac for the first time, so issue 1 was the first thing I'd ever coloured on a computer, and I had to learn like in print each month, like being on the shop front. And it was, but actually even now I just think like, what a brilliant way to like be forced to kind of figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
And The Losers, it did well, people seemed to like it, they made a movie out of it, you know, and so it kind of, that sort of set the path really for kind of, you know, people respected what we did because it was our own thing, you know, which, like we're talking about, that can you know, put you in good stead in comics, you know, when you have your own thing going on, and B, yeah, it kind of just have opened a lot of doors. You know, I remember like Mike Chiarello was the first one from DC. He used to be the art director at DC, awesome artist, great guy. And I was young, and I was like, Will, Mark's asked me to do a Batman cover, like, can I do one? He's like, listen, Mark's the kind of guy that can give you work for, like, yes, go and do that, man, like, you know. So, yeah, and it's all just kind of, it's all just carried on, really. You know, I keep thinking that my art book, which I think is when I last saw you, actually, I did a signing up here for my art book, it was in 2016. And I nearly called it, It's All Downhill From Here. You know, because that felt like, you know, I've been very lucky to work on a bunch of stuff, not just comics, but movies. I worked on the Star Wars movies, the Dread movie, you know, stuff that I never thought, I only ever wanted to just draw. You know, and if I can figure out a way to get by in life drawing, all the better. So, and it's just carried on, and it's just, I'm as surprised as you are, really. It's amazing. I feel very lucky.
We've got a good wee segue there into Ex Machina. So you worked on the Dread movie, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it was with Alex Garland that you then did the design work for Ex Machina?
Yeah, so I did 3 movies with Alex, Dread, Ex Machina and Annihilation. I got the job on Dread because I'd just done my first bit of concept work for a director called Peter Berg, who was going to be doing The Losers originally as a movie. We got on well, and he asked me to do some concept work for him for Dune, actually, an adaptation that he never did. And then I saw online they were greenlit this Dread movie, and I was just sort of in concept art mode, and I did like 3 paintings basically, and I shot the city, some judges. And they went online, and they were picked up as official concept art for the movie, and that's not good. You know, I was like, oh, you know, and I phoned Rebellion. I was like, that wasn't me. I didn't say they were official. Da, da, da. And then I got an email from DNA, which is the production company that Alex Garland works with to make all his films, and they said, can you give us a call, please? And I was like, this is really bad. And this guy, the exec editor Michael, he said, hey, Jock, this is Michael from DNA. I immediately went into, I'm so sorry, you know, and he went, yeah, no, don't worry about that. You know, we saw them, but we really like them. Do you want to come in for a meeting? And that was it. And Alex was, he's an amazing filmmaker. He's quite an intense guy as well, and he was giving me the evils for the whole sort of meeting. And then, but the next meeting we had, when I'd actually done some work, he was like a different person. Like, he really, he's awesome to work with. Super challenging, you know, he has high standards, but so we developed a good relationship. I did Ex Machina. I don't know how many of you have seen that, but Ava, the robot, I was, I mean, the way they work, I was the 4th guy on the film. You know, he'd written a script, nothing was greenlit, no studio was interested. It's just like me and you chatting on the phone each day. I'd do some stuff. It was like the best way to work, really. He'd phone me every morning at 9. We'd talk about what I'd done the day before, and I did about 6 weeks on that, and then Annihilation. And I was due to do another couple of character things for him, actually, and then COVID hit, and then kind of that project fell apart. But yeah, he's fantastic. And that did sort of, broaden my horizons, I guess. I really enjoy working in film as well. I love movies just as much as I love comic books, and I feel pretty lucky to have done some of that stuff too.
Yeah, but I imagine that the amount of creative control and influence that you had in that film wouldn't be typical of most people's experience in film.
Maybe.
Where you're like a tiny cog in a big machine.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, Alex he's super decent, you know what I mean? So he respects what you do. And yeah, there's a lot of super rough things I did, and you can see them as shots in the film. They weren't keyframes as such, but he responds to ideas. And my stuff's quite loose, actually, for, you know, a lot of concept work is very particular. It's describing something. And not deliberately, but I tended to go more for mood, I think, you know, and a lot of my stuff is very sort of loose, and I try and make it more evocative than literal sort of thing, and I think he really responded to that, you know, so, like, but then I worked on Star Wars as well, did costume design, and yeah, I was absolutely a cog in the machine, but the thing I found, like, the higher up kind of work you do, you're actually hired for a reason, and if you have initiative and you bring your own ideas to it, that's a real benefit, because it's like you know, some costumes were super directed, but then I worked on The Last Jedi, everyone's favourite, and I mean it is mine, but, you know, Luke Skywalker's black costume at the end when it says that, that there's an example where I just they were going to use him in his Jedi robes, and I was just like, can I try something, you know, because I loved him in Jedi, Return of the Jedi, when he looked a bit more kind of ready for business, you know, a bit more fitted, and he was like, you know, so I did like a mix of that and the Jedi robes, and just to try it out. And Michael Kaplan, the costume designer, was just like, oh yeah, I quite like that, you know. And a lot of the drawings, we did maybe 50 drawings. This one I did 4, 5. I made the hood a wee bit bigger on one of them, the cape a different length on one of them, nothing much. And I didn't know it was going to be in the movie until I was watching the film in the cinema, an actual Luke Skywalker, like because it is Luke Skywalker, it's the real guy, it's not pretend. Like he walks out wearing this and I mean, I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it, because it was the most surreal moment I've apart from maybe Chris Evans looking like one of my characters in The Losers coming up and shaking my hand. That was pretty surreal, but it was a really, you know, just how has this happened, you know? Yeah. Luke Skywalker's walking out, and there. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. Cheers, everyone, for coming. Where do we go after Luke Skywalker?
Well, we've got the Mondo film posters. We've got Gone. I mean, like, maybe you want to tell us a bit about the whole distillery setup.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So, who's here aware of distillery? Coventry Distillery. Very few. Okay. So, I did a Batman book at DC called Batman 1.9, which I wrote and drew. I was friendly with Chip Mojo, who set up Distillery. They're a new publisher. Entirely creator-owned, oversized books. They're a bit more European in feel. The pages are larger when you draw them, and they've hired a roster of amazing people: Scott Snyder, James Tynan, Ram V, Becky Coonan, Tula Lote, Lee Garbett, who's here. Amazing people, and they've just let us sort of, you know, do what we want, really. So Gone was their launch book, which was both kind of flattering and challenging, I think, to do, because I was writing and drawing. I haven't written that much, but yeah, Gone is a science fiction story of a young 13-year-old girl that's like a stowaway on an intergalactic space liner. It's a little bit like, I realise it's a little bit like the Clara Pandy in Halo Jones, you know, so it's a bit like that, and I, not deliberately, but I was, it's definitely a nod to my 2000 AD sort of roots. It's a science fiction, and she's, issue 1, she's 13, and then issue 2, we like jump 10 years, and she's 23, so the story spans a long time. And yeah, I'm currently doing a book with them with Scott Snyder as well, called You Won't Feel a Thing, which is like a serial killer kind of old people's home story, which I know the world is craving for.
Will we open it up to questions? Has anybody got a question for Jock?
Uh-oh. My nephew's over there. Surely, James, you can think of something. Come on,
Well, I've got more questions.
Yeah, lovely.
I think this is a question I get asked often, and I always wonder why people ask folk that have been drawing comics as long as the two of us what advice you would give to people trying to get in, because it was so different back when we both get in.
Yeah.
But given that you're at a stage where you're still doing creator-owned work, you're part of a new company that's a slightly different type of business model.
Yeah.
It's like is it a kind of cooperative type thing?
Kind of. I mean, we all got deals, but we all own a stake in the company as well, which their sort of remit was they're trying to address the way that a lot of creators over the years in comics have maybe not been treated as well as that they might have been. But it's not that different really to in a day-to-day way to how something else might work. But we're all basically invested in each other's work, so it feels like a bit of a community amongst the creators, which is lovely. But I had to get into comics. I mean, the internet didn't exist when we were, so I'd hitchhike to shows with a portfolio under my arm, and they'd say no, and then I'd go off and I'd come back the next year, and it's very different now. I think being able to share it online is a huge. That's basically the difference, I think, and though it may be slightly brutal, if people respond to your work, then it will be shared, right? I mean, that seems to be the big difference. We used to give out photocopies to people, hope that that they'd show their friends or whatever. But now, obviously, the landscape's very different. Right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's I get asked that question a lot. Like how, what advice would you give somebody starting out? And it's, I mean, other than the fact that the internet has made it easier, in theory, to get your work seen, but the fact that everybody can do it.
Everyone can do it, yeah. And also, I think if you're not quite ready, then it's actually, if you're exposed, like, do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's good to hold one in the chamber, kind of thing, and then, shoot your shot and maybe when we were doing it, there wasn't any other way. That was the way, you get rejected, and no one would see your work until they finally said, yeah, go on then, we'll give you a go. So I don't know. I think in general though, it's a good thing that you can share your work now with everyone.
What's your best bit of advice for people in creative industries?
Is anyone here trying to make comics?
There we go.
No? Yes?
Yes.
This is where I get. It sounds like kind of cliche, but kind of maybe because of everything that we've maybe said, it backs it up. I'd say hold on to and nurture your own ideas rather than trying to fit in. So I was rejected from every art college, for example. I couldn't get into art college, and that's actually why I decided to try and do comics. And I think if I had gone to art college, I would have probably tried to just fit it in with what was the thing to do at the time. Probably quite tasteful editorial illustrations, probably in '92, something would have been the thing, And I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do really, and so I think it would have been a negative thing for me to do, and instead I chose to do this, which meant I only had myself, my own sort of ideas to kind of to trade on, and it's a really nice thing when you realise that because that's almost like that's slightly idealistic, isn't it? To be able to do that in the world, to have your own ideas, your own thing, and for you to find a place in the world where you can be successful, for want of a better word. But to me, all that means is if you're able to follow your own path and make a living from it, if that's what you want to do with it, then that's a very lucky thing. But that, I think, is the goal to sort of aim for. I think it's very easy to. I can remember I got asked to do some Marvel covers, and I'm just not suited to doing Iron Man, and I did some Avengers covers, and it was early on enough where I don't know whether you had it, but like when this is a good bit of advice. When you're slightly flattered by the offer, so you take it on. Right? That's a really important thing, because like Todd McFarlane emailed me out of the blue and said, do you want to do a Spawn cover? And I was like, holy shit, it's Todd McFarlane. Like my 19-year-old self was kind of, and that's a lovely thing, right? But then you've still got to do the actual work, and the work is the only bit, of course, that really matters. And actually I quite enjoyed doing the Spawn cover. But these Avengers covers, I was just not suited, and I was wooed by the Avengers, Who wouldn't be, right? About 5 or 6 issues in, Tom Brevoort, Tom, do you know what? Do you mind if I just politely bow out, because these aren't, they're not great covers,
What did he say?
He was cool about it, I I didn't grow up reading Marvel comics. I grew up reading 2000 AD. So,
Yeah.
I find I have to have a bit of an affiliation with the character, a bit of, to draw them well. I like drawing Wolverine, but even that's probably because remember that Ken Williams, John J. Muth, Havoc Wolverine meltdown. That's probably just because of that, really. So, yeah, Tom was fine about it, and actually, I felt like it was a grown-up thing to do, rather than just trying to cling on for dear life and produce not great work. No, like even though I'm pulling myself away from doing Avengers covers, I think that's probably was the right move. So yeah, stick to your guns, I guess.
This is the personal announcement. The photo shoot at Emma Gregory is about to take place at 2:15
Any questions?
at the photo booth area.
Do you want a mic? Do you want to come up?
Purchase tickets to get your photograph taken with Emma Gregory. Please head to the photo booth area now. Thank you.
When you're talking about sharing stuff on the internet, how much of a worry is AI these days and having your work scraped for AI, and is that already affecting either of your careers at this point?
I have thoughts about AI. Are we doing this? I think the people that can actually do it will become more valuable. I think that jobs will be lost, and that's a really unfortunate thing. Almost like when sort of Photoshop came in, people that used to set letters, they lost their jobs, and it's kind of tragic, But desktop publishing came in, and that's part of progress and technology and everything else. And AI is now here, and it's part of progress and technology. And I think there's a strange sort of inevitability to it. I think there's actually something really cool about. I like the idea of shared consciousness, and to me, AI is or certainly artistic AI is an example of like a weird amalgam of everything we've all done. However, it's absolutely messed up, and it's the corporate element that's messing it up as to me. That's just where we are now. Hopefully it will figure itself out. Proper compensation for people whose work gets copied, figure out the power consumption, which seems to be a massive thing as well. But and everyone online is so sort of against it, and I am too in the form that we're talking about. But I also think there's something kind of amazing about it. But as to like what we do, I genuinely think people will have so much more access and ability to make images. And I'm sure AI will improve and get better. But there's still this. You can sort of tell that there's a lack of like that word amalgam. It feels very soupy, AI, and I'm sure it will change. But I genuinely believe that people actually have their own voices, which is what I was trying to get at, talking about advice. I think that will make those people more valuable, personally. Like there's only one Vin, you know what I mean? It's like, or is there?
Well, funnily enough, Rafael Grampa, who's a Brazilian artist that Jock and I are friends with, and we're in a kind of WhatsApp group, and he's been dabbling with it. Lots of people I know have had a shot of it, and he put in Frank Whiteley's Superman Alien and got a bunch of things that weren't a million miles away from stuff that I could have done. It's quite strange.
Like Batman Jock will be there's so many Batman sketches and covers of mine. You do but it's kind of close but no cigar. It's kind of like there's something weird, really weird
there's
about
definitely
it.
something different about it. I suppose it's a bit like from the point of view of telling a good comic story, like making a good movie. There's skills that you need to have. It's not enough just to give anybody a movie camera and expect them to be able to direct and edit, and so I think you could use AI certainly to help you produce more work, but you still need to actually know what you're doing.
I think it can help with, and I think this is the way that Grandpa is interested in it, is with workflow, essentially. Like in comics, backgrounds, man, they are a lot of work. And manga artists would have assistants that would do that for them. For example, is it any different to maybe have your own corner of AI where you're training it and prompting it? I don't know, but yeah, to me it's going to improve that element, like the workflow element, the logistics element. But again, when it comes down to it, you still need people that understand like the form of comics or the form of making a movie. I think, to do anything good with it. Otherwise, there's that. It's like a magpie being impressed by the shiny jewel. It's like, but that doesn't mean anything at all. It's like the shiny jewel can look incredibly, enticing, and a lot of AI looks incredibly rich and detailed. And when you see that, especially when you're the nature that we tend to like consume feeds and stuff, you're just flicking through stuff. No one really stops and engages in quite the same way. So that sort of impressive looking noise that AI does very well, I think I think doesn't hold up under scrutiny. What was it, Guillermo del Toro? He had this great quote last week. He said that all it's shown us is that it makes very, what was the word he used? Like, he said very sort of competent screensavers. That's what he said it was.
Yeah, he was quite scathing about it, wasn't he? So, how are we doing time-wise?
Any other questions, if there's time? Okay. Any other questions?
10-2?
On the mic so people can hear. Okay, yeah, it's a question about a book I did with Scott Snyder called Book of Evil, and it's like a prose story that has like spot illustrations by myself. And you asked what came first, the chicken or the egg? Scott's script or the... we talked about... me and Scott have done a lot of stuff together, and we talk a lot about projects, and Book of Evil was an idea of not doing a regular comic, but maybe making more of a kind of artifact. Like, in fact, the book itself is... I won't get into why, but we actually originally envisioned it more like almost like a high-end production where it would feel like someone's diary or something. We were just going to do all kinds of weird stuff in it with flaps and lifts, So that's where the germ of the idea came from, was to make it like an artifact. No, Scott would send me. We work pretty loosely together now because we've done so much together. He never sends me a full script anymore. It's sometimes be like a text message of a paragraph of something, and I do some stuff and he writes something amazing over it. That's sort of how Book of Evil went. But I like that. I like when something's so loose like that because there's a trust there and it's not specific and it gives you a bit of room to kind of play around with. So Book of Evil, yeah, it was like an experiment, but and we got Emma Price, who's a good friend, to design it all, and she brought loads to it in the manner that I was talking about, making it just look like a unique sort of thing. So yeah, that's how that went down.
Good question. Anybody got a better question?
Come on, don't be shy. Anyone? Ah, Lee Garbutt, there's lovely Lee Garbutt that I was talking about from Distillery. Lee, what's your question? Did I manage to get a beer? No, I did not, Lee. I tried really hard. They went to speak to 2 supervisors and they wouldn't let us bring them back in here. I'm sorry. How's your coffee?
How come you're allowed coffee? Surely that's more of a hazard in a crowded area.
I mean, if we can sort it out for next year, I'd be grateful.
Okay. So what are you doing right now? Are you still...
So right now, I'm doing another distillery book with Scott Snyder that I mentioned. It's called You Won't Feel a Thing, and it's about a guy who's has dementia in an old people's home, but he used to be a detective, and a serial killer from his past has clearly come back to haunt him, for want of a better word. Quite a sort of quiet, sort of noir-y sort of story, so I'm drawing it all in double-page spreads to try and changed my format to challenge how I draw it visually, which is what's really I'm really enjoying doing it actually. It's funny, one thing is when you do draw comics, you do get asked to draw a lot of stuff that isn't that exciting. You just have to kind of put the work in and do the thing, you know. So I found changing the format was a nice way to kind of play around with it. There's a Batman thing at Warner Brothers that's just got greenlit that I've got quite a big hand in designing. I'll tell you about it after, which I'm really excited about. I'm doing a poster for Nosferatu, the new Richard Eggers film. I'm doing an official poster for that, which is cool. I haven't done any posters for a couple of years, so that's exciting. I think that's it.
Okay, that's plenty.
That's plenty.
Do you?
Oh, hang on, no, sorry. Witches, Scott Snyder. It's been greenlit at Amazon Studios as an animation. Scott's co-showrunner. He's writing it. I'm a creative producer, so I keep an eye on all the visuals, and that's currently in production as well. How could I forget that? Like, that's with all of
Because you've got so much going on. Have you read anything in the last year or two that has really impressed you, or that you would recommend?
Oh, this is a tough question, Vin, because like you, I don't really read comics anymore. It sounds really bad, but I have a pile of comics from friends. Yeah, I think, I must read that. But when you make them every single day, I don't know. I still read Dread most weeks.
Right.
How about you?
I should really say Gone, shouldn't I?
No, it's fine.
Bless
your heart.
Jim Hamilton from Forbidden Planet. He basically just like texts me and says, "I've got this in. I think you might like, you know." Nice. And so.
Can you hook me up in the gym? Where's Jim?
Jim is there. So yeah, I've got yours. I've got the Tula Lottie and Becky Cloonan.
Somna?
Yeah,
that's great.
I can't actually think. Oh God! Obviously, I got that David Mazzucchelli Year One.
Oh yeah, who did?
A huge Batman book. Oh my God, it's so amazing.
That book, so this is an artist edition, which is when they reproduce original artwork, the original scans at their original size. And I don't know, do members of the public buy these books? I don't know,
think so.
But like I imagine about 80% of the entire comics. Yeah, they did. Oh, fantastic!
It's not only artists that buy them, no.
I remember a few years ago I got a Watchmen one, and I love Dave, but it was the biggest waste of money because his pages are so clean. Yeah. There was nothing to see, and like when I say they're scans, you see all the whiteout and the pencils and the mess, and like my pages are pretty scrappy, and I kind of like that about them.
That's another thing. Are you all on paper, or are you partly digital, or?
So I'm still drawing comics on paper. In fact, when I did One Dark Night, the Batman story, because I was writing it, I write by doing thumbnails. Like I don't write a script. I have to write visually, and that's how I figure out the flow of the story. And I was doing like four pages to an A4 sheet, and I was cutting them out with scissors and putting them, like placing them with sellotape, and because it's just I love the kind of the hands-on feel of being able to do that, and so I still do comics that way. I colour on the Mac, and little augmentations. You know, again, if you're up against deadline and a page is pretty much done, but you can scan it in and maybe add the black here, or you can, you know. So, but the film work is entirely digital. So it's painting digitally, basically. A bit of both. It depends on the project, I guess. Sure.
Okay. How are we doing time-wise? 3 minutes?
Yes. Can I give you the mic so everyone can hear? Thank you.
Yeah.
Come up on stage.
So if you see other people's art, does it influence your drawing? And like if you're like, man, that person, I love the way they draw hair, I want to draw it a bit that way or something. And then if so, how, when you're doing a longer series, how do you make sure that you keep consistent with your original drawing style in your series?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely did that more when I was starting out. I think, in fact, when I didn't get into art college, I went into a comic shop and thought, right, okay, what's available? Because I thought I'd try and do comics, and I saw, I think like Kid Eternity, Sean Phillips was doing at the time, and Enigma, Duncan Fegredo was doing at the time, and those two for me sort of stood out as kind of maybe the closest to what I liked about the art on the shelves at that point. Yeah, they're well drawn, they're both great artists. There was a design element to them which I really liked, and they used quite a lot of black, which I do as well. That's the only conscious choice I've made for my style is how much black to use. So early on, I definitely did what you were saying, and in fact, my very first published Judge Dredd story is another artist called John McRae, Jolly. He thought that my first story was Sean and Duncan working together, and he didn't believe that I was a real person. There's two things about that. One is like, well, I guess my influences were showing, but two, that's quite a compliment. Like if Sean and Duncan are two of the best we've got, So that I think earlier on you do that more. And I don't know, there's still things I feel like I struggle to draw. So I'm to always look when I see someone else doing it well. Hair is a bugger, waves and water is notoriously difficult. When I see someone handling that a particular way, I don't want to copy how they're doing it, but I try and ingest it, so I guess there's that element. But yeah, I mean, your question was like, how do you sort of not do that, right? Or
If you're doing like a full
if you do a big story, how do you
keeping consistency on a longer?
Well, comics need to be consistent. If they're not consistent, that's one of the hardest things about them. If you draw a great face, you've got to draw a great car. Otherwise, forget it. You're out. Forget it. Game over. Because you lose the reader. Everything has to exist, and that's what you're so amazing at. Vin's worlds are just like they're entirely coherent. And that was the same as Mick McMahon when I was younger. I used to like Brian's Bollins. It's a bit more impressive. But then I sort of learned what Mick was doing, and it really lit a fire in me. And
it's interesting that you bring up Mick McMahon because he's one of those few artists who has changed his style quite dramatically throughout his career. Mick's probably 10 years older than me, and he's had really strikingly different art styles over the years.
Yeah, he has.
Funnily enough, Preacher.
Steve
Dillon, thank you. When you look at the first issue of Preacher, there's actually quite a lot of hatching, and he quickly got into a way of, probably just because it was a monthly book, of just phasing out the hatching, and it ended up just being really simple, clear line. And he's a really effective storyteller, so it wasn't like...
That, actually, I reckon that ties into what you're saying. But often at the beginning of a series, I've learned not to do this as much, but you do sometimes think, right, how am I going to approach this one? And I reckon I think Preacher was pretty hot when it was coming out, and I think he tried to put a bit more into it, and then quickly realised that he couldn't keep it going. That sounds terrible. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I actually preferred it as it got simpler.
Yeah. Right. But I've definitely been a sort of victim of thinking, I know, I'll do more hatching, say, for example, or in the colouring I'll do it all desaturated and with a spot colour or something. You try and choose, so rather than a specific thing like how to draw hair, it'd be like a stylistic choice. But what I've consistently found is you just end up drawing it the way you always draw it. It's really weird. Like you have the greatest lofty aspirations, but you just end up drawing it the way you draw it. And actually, because comics are so brutal, and you have to do so much work. There's always another panel, always another page, always another thing to do. It does, like you're saying, it creates. You can sometimes surprise yourself because it forces you to. Your output is so much. You'll be doing things that you wouldn't be able to do by design, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like my favourite element of it is laying out the story, for example, is small thumbnails, because I mean, actually, that's to me. Then the work's done. I've told the story. Now I've got to draw the bloody thing. Yeah, it's like
Funnily enough, for me, it's actually just it's laying things out, doing the thumbnails on the margin of the script. You know, like working out how to tell the story and putting the final touches on. Everything in the middle is just a chore.
It's a chore. Yeah, it's weird. It's like it sounds. It's not necessarily negative. It's just necessary, right? You know. But consistency is key because it's like, you know, if you draw a face one way in one panel, maybe you've got a bit of reference, it's a bit of lighting, but then if they look different on a different panel, it's like watching a movie with bad actors. You know, with the minute the curtain, the minute you see behind the curtain, you can lose. I think you lose the connection with the reader. You know, so that's what makes comics so hard. I think is being able to do that thing well. And Mick McMahon, for example, changed his style a million times, but it's uniquely Mick the whole time. Yeah. And he's not doing it. You can see like he's doing it very deliberately. Like there's no. Remember like Howler, which is it was just bizarre, but it all obeyed its own rules. Does that make sense? You know, it was a thoughtful change. It's not just kind of. It wasn't like a throwaway change. I've meandered a bit from your question. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Actually, one of the interesting things that Mick McMahon did with that Howler story was that there's a strange mottled texture. It's very flat colour. It's like simple, confident line work with very flat colour, and but some of the flat colours have got this weird mottled kind of feel. And what he'd done was he was using like magic markers, and he was colouring the back of the page so that the colour was coming through the paper, but not fully.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, really, to do that. But actually, I don't know. It's so.
I think it was just a 3-part story, was it? And it was a Judge Dredd story, and Mick McMahon is the guy's name, and Howler was the name of the story. It was really good.
And if you don't know Mick's work, also look for Sky Chariots, which is a slain story, and I think that's like top 5 pieces of comic art that exists in the world.
And that was all in black and white.
Yeah,
and it looked almost like a lino cut or something.
Yeah, it was really scratchy on it. All the shading, there was no real solid blacks. Well there was, but generally speaking, he was scratching all the shadows, and that was because he was nervous about the new story. I remember he was talking about it. He got to a point. He'd done a lot of Dread that people liked, and he's presented with Slain, and he was incredibly nervous about it. So he did all the spotting of the blacks, which is when you shadow the figures, on tracing paper on vellum on top of the pencils, because he was scared about getting it wrong. So he developed this kind of scratchy thing, and isn't that amazing? He was trying to figure it out, and that became what makes it so good. Which it does make sense when you think about it, right?
Yeah. I think we've probably run out of time.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you mind? The work they've done with Batman. DC Batman is the only DC title that I gave Batman. How do you feel that your work's influenced the cinematic world, because you work with the cinema world as well with other stuff? How do you feel?
Well, actually, I did some work on Batman Begins. I got a call from DC. They hired a few of the comic artists to see where they were coming from. It was me, it was Jean-Paul Leon, I think maybe Lee Bermeo might have done some, possibly. And there's a shot in Batman Begins which is just like one of the pieces that I did. So it's funny, yeah. I remember speaking to Jason Aaron, a writer, about this. It's when you do comics, particularly for Marvel and DC, he was like, we're the R&D department. You know, we're like in the basement trying stuff out, and some of it goes upstairs. It's like, I think that's a really good way of putting it. My point being is, I think they absolutely look at everything that goes on in comics. And with like the new Batman movie, Matt Reeves one, clearly Lee Bermeo's work was a huge influence on that. Matt Reeves, I did like this new project that I'm doing. how do I speak around it? They're aware, is what I'm saying. You know, so whether it's influencing in a strong way or not, I guess that's dependent. But surely Superman. I mean, your Superman is so iconic, and to me, some of the imagery you did with Superman, like, speaks to the character, frankly, in a way that other people haven't done. So, did you have any contact with the filmmakers at all?
Yeah, well, I was invited along with Jason Aaron and Scott Snyder and John Ostrander and Jerry Ordway. There was a bunch of us, I think there was 8 of us, and we got invited to go to Atlanta, to the studio where James Gunn's making this Superman movie that's coming out in the middle of next year. And James Gunn's a huge comic fan, and so he chose people that had done work on Superman, that had spoken to him in some way. So that's why we were the ones that got invited. And he was like really, really excited, like meeting the writers and artists. It was nuts.
Yeah, I've found that, like, you meet actors at various events and things, and meeting famous people is a bit of a weird thing, but honestly, in the comics world, more often than not, they're more excited to meet us than we are the other way around.
But it was really, what was actually really nice about it was that he wasn't that kind of, like, I don't know, like, there's that kind of Hollywood cliche about people taking themselves too seriously and having huge egos and all that kind of thing. And he was just like the biggest comic geek, and he was telling all of us about, I loved what you did in this and I loved what you did in that. And then when we got to the studio, and we got a tour of the studio, and like there's just like artwork of mine and various other people's just like all plastered all over the place. But the thing is, it's very much just kind of to keep everybody in the mood, I think. I mean, it's like, because as far as I'm aware, there's nothing actually in the plot that's
nothing specific
to All-Star Superman that I did with Grant Morrison, and there's nothing specific about the Superman costume with the slight changes in it that's anything like mine. So it is very much just a kind of
I think we might see him sitting on a cloud though, right? Surely.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, that's a perfect way of illustrating it. I think people, they're very aware, and obviously if they're working on a character, they look at what's going on in the comics world. It's it's all part of the mix, I would say. Oh, there's a judge who's just walked in. Yeah, it's very flattering for sure, because like movies, comics, even though we've got, with the movies they've got bigger, I still feel like we're still slightly, not in the ghetto, but do you know what I mean? We're just in our own little thing, and the fact that they are recognised in that way is, I mean, it's kind of cool, right? When you walk in the studio and you get to see your work. It's just we work by ourselves in the little tunnel vision with this little thing that we do, and it's lovely to see it on a bigger stage for sure. Sorry, say again. 3 judges. We're rumbled when they found out about us. Is that it for time?
Yeah, sure. That's us.
Yeah. Can I just say a couple of things? Can I just say a huge thanks to Vin for taking the time to do this. It's absolutely lovely to see you.
Pleasure.
And thank you. And thanks for coming, because as I said, it's lovely being back in Glasgow, and I appreciate you all coming out. So I really
and thanks very much to Jock for coming up and sharing his wit and wisdom with us. Thanks all. Thank you.